Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump attending the second day of the G7 summit in Evian, France. With the Iran deal taking center stage, the president pushing back on claims about the deal, and the latest from his sit-down with Middle East leaders. President Trump meeting with Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky at the Group of Seven summit in France today. The issues the two discussed. Decision day in several parts of the country. Voters are heading to the polls in key contests, including a mayoral race in Washington, D.C., runoffs in Georgia and Alabama, and a special election in California. What to watch for as results begin to come in. The FBI thwarting a plot to use explosive-laden drones to target the recent UFC event at the White House. The DOJ releasing fresh images showing firearms and chats by the suspects. How many plotters are allegedly involved, and how Vice President JD Vance is reacting. The Justice Department responding after California Governor Gavin Newsom claimed he's under federal investigation. The DOJ confirms multiple probes tied to whistleblower allegations, but rejects Newsom's accusation that President Trump is behind them. The first named tropical storm of the Atlantic hurricane season could hit tomorrow. Coastal Texas is bracing for heavy rainfall and flash flooding.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for joining us. President Trump attending the second day of the G7 summit in Evian, France, with the Iran deal front and center, and the president pushing back on reports that the U.S. is investing in Iran while laying out a vision for the future of the Middle East. NTD's White House correspondent Mari Otsu, on the ground in Geneva, has the latest from the president.
It's been a very busy day here as it's winding down now for President Trump. He started the day with a working lunch with other G7 leaders joined by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And then he had separate bilateral sit-downs with the leaders of the UAE and Qatar, respectively. But amid all of this, the Iran nuclear deal is still front and center, with President Trump posting a Truth Social overnight, quote, "Iran has agreed to never have a nuclear weapon." Also, the story that the U.S. is paying Iran $300 million is, quote, fake news put out by the Democrats. Now, the president there is referring to what he's been calling erroneous reporting that Iran would get millions of dollars in reconstruction funds from the U.S. as part of this deal. Take a look.
We are not investing any money in Iran, by the way. That rumor got out there yesterday. It was ridiculous. We have the right to go in someday and do, if I want to do something, or somebody wants to do something, but we are not investing any money. We have no obligation to invest any money in Iran. Working with Qatar and the people of Qatar was really a pleasure. They were tough. They were strong. You know, they are the closest to Iran physically. You fought and you helped us, and with great bravery. So I just want to compliment you on that, and you'll always be my friend.
As you can see there, President Trump praising the leader of Qatar there for the country's support and what he calls bravery during Operation Epic Fury. The president also touting the ties between the U.S. and Qatar, saying that in the future, Qatar will be investing over $19 trillion, what the president calls a historic amount, in the U.S. Meanwhile, the White House is adding that if Iran does deliver on its commitments that are laid out in this memorandum of understanding that will be signed on Friday in Switzerland, they could possibly be rewarded for their good behavior with things such as sanctions relief and eventually joining the world economy. Vice President JD Vance clarifying, saying that the Gulf Cooperation Council, which consists of 6 Gulf states, could contribute to that reward if Iran does fulfill their obligations. Meanwhile, President Trump saying that he will send the agreement to Congress for review. Take a look.
Well, what I'd like to do is send it to Congress, saying you shouldn't approve it, and I'll get it approved. Whatever I say, they want to do the opposite. It's not working too well for them, by the way. But yeah, I never thought about sending it, never even thought about it, but I will send it to Congress. I like the idea. I mean, who wouldn't approve it? Let's let them have a nuclear weapon. The Democrats will say, oh, they should have a nuclear weapon. They'll go crazy. I like the idea. Send it to Congress, please, all right?
Meanwhile, Don, on other peace efforts that are being discussed here at the G7 summit, President Trump says that Russia should make a peace deal with Ukraine. That's after President Trump said that he had a very good meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this morning, saying he would also meet him again later in the day. And this is coming as President Trump says that the U.S. will soon also be able to increase sanctions on Russia, saying that he removed them during Operation Epic Fury so as not to impede oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz, but that he's now ready to reimpose those sanctions. President Trump also, this very busy day for him has not yet come to a close, as he's currently about to attend a cultural performance and concert hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. And after that, there's going to be a dinner with all of the G7 leaders, which is now currently closed to the press. But Don, President Trump did tease that at the presser tomorrow, he may read the full memorandum of understanding, that text in full for all of the press there. Back to you.
More updates on the U.S.-Iran peace deal. Switzerland will host the signing ceremony on Friday. Switzerland's foreign ministry confirming today the signing will be held at the mountainside Bergenstock resort in central Switzerland. They say both the Pakistani and Qatari mediators, as well as the U.S. and Iran, proposed the location. The site is believed to be difficult to access and properly secured. President Trump discussing the U.S.-Iran peace deal today while in France, the president saying he believes the agreement could survive even if Israel attacked Lebanon.
I'll tell you what, Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it.
Syria has a long and complicated relationship with Lebanon. Syrian troops maintained a presence in the country from 1976 to 2005. President Trump also said he was not happy with Israel's handling of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Iran's top diplomat saying today that the end of the Iran war must include the end of Israel's presence in Lebanon. He added that further Israeli attacks on Lebanon will be considered a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding. Netanyahu yesterday saying that Israel would not withdraw from land seized in Lebanon, where Israel is fighting the Iran-backed Hezbollah terror group. Netanyahu says Israel has created a security zone in the country and will remain there as long as necessary. As he keeps working on a deal with Iran, President Trump is also trying to bring peace to Ukraine. The president is meeting with Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky at the Group of Seven summit in France today. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest.
Look, Russia should make a deal. Russia's lost tremendous amounts of people, and so has Ukraine.
President Trump on Tuesday saying Russia and Ukraine lost 35,000 soldiers last month, highlighting the need to strike a peace deal. Video shows the president attending the G7 Ukraine format in France on Tuesday. Pictures also show the commander-in-chief sitting down with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky one-on-one. The president says he also spoke with Russia's Vladimir Putin on Sunday, but it's not clear what exactly they talked about. Meanwhile, Zelensky commenting on his talks with President Trump.
We spoke about air defense with President Trump. Our teams will work, and God willing, this time we will succeed in obtaining licenses for the production of the relevant anti-ballistic systems and missiles.
He added that Ukraine is also seeking a winter support package and more pressure on Russia. According to him, the US is ready to, quote, provide backstop in all of these areas. President Trump, meanwhile, highlighting that he stopped the policy of supporting Ukraine the way the previous administration did.
The European Union pays us full price for weapons, but it's not that. It has no impact on us other than we sell weapons. We're thousands of miles away. But the only reason I don't like to see 25,000 young people die every month.
President Trump and Zelensky are scheduled to hold a longer meeting later on Tuesday. Ariel Pastar, NTD News.
Gas prices are coming down. The national average fell below $4 a gallon for the first time since mid-April. The drop coming as hopes for a possible end to the war in Iran improve market sentiment. According to GasBuddy, the average price fell to $3.99 a gallon. The decline comes after President Trump announced that the U.S. and Iran have agreed to a memorandum of understanding aimed at ending the conflict. The president writing on social media, quote, "The deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete." President Trump also said the Strait of Hormuz would reopen without tolls and that the U.S. blockade on Iran would be lifted. A formal signing ceremony is scheduled in Friday on Switzerland. Oil markets also responded with oil prices falling by about 5% for a second day in a row to a 3-month low. Brent crude futures fell $4.21 or 5.1% to settle at $78.96 a barrel, while U.S. Texas Intermediate crude fell $4.70 or 5.8% to settle at $76.05. More updates on the U.S.-Iran peace deal. Switzerland will host the signing ceremony on Friday. Switzerland's foreign ministry confirming today the signing will be held at the mountainside Bergenstock Resort in central Switzerland. They say both the Pakistani and Qatari mediators as well as the U.S. and Iran proposed the location. The site is believed to be difficult to access and properly secured. To discuss the Iran deal further, joining us now is Shahrzad Ghaneh, publisher of the Epoch Times Persian edition. So, Shahrzad, thank you for joining us today. And as you know, today is the second day of the G7 summit, and conversations are centered on the Iran deal. The full text isn't released yet. What did the president have to say about the Iran peace agreement today?
Thanks for having me. There were several topics, but the two major ones is that the President Trump has laid out the two primary components of this deal to be able to end the war with the Islamic Republic. One was that Tehran will never have a nuclear weapon. And then he also talked about the Strait of Hormuz, that the Strait of Hormuz will reopen and it will be toll-free. These were the concerns that were addressed, and at the G7, Trump also said that he said that the deal is going to be fair and it's going to be very good. So he called it fair and good about the deal. And later, Trump said that he would likely to hold a press conference to publicly talk about the details of the agreement, and he said he's going to read the agreement word by word. He also said that he never talked about regime change in Iran, which was a major concern of Iranian people, but he clearly said that he never talked about it, and he said eliminating the top officials has basically made some sorts of regime change in Iran.
Okay, so now talk to us about the Iranian side. How are Iranian officials framing the deal both inside and on the world stage, domestically and on the world stage?
Well, the new agreement looks like it has sparked a fierce debate inside the country. We can see that in media. We can see that among the protesters that come out at nights, those who have ties with the Islamic Republic. I'm talking about not ordinary people, protesters. There are hardliners that are criticizing the deal, like they're saying it's as a major concession to Washington, and they're saying that the Islamic Republic is backing down under the pressure from the U.S. and it's risking its core principles. And then we have some reformists, which when we talk about reformists, is still within the regime. And they are reformists, they are pro-current government voices. They say the agreement is a practical way to reduce the current tensions that we have during the war, and then ease the economic tensions, and then it can also avoid the wider conflict. So even inside the hardliners, they are divided. Some see the deal as a sign of weakness. The others say it's making it possible for the regime's military leverage, and then it should be viewed as a strategic win. So this disagreement is getting into a broader political battle inside Iran over the deal that should be basically is supposed to be signed on Friday.
Okay, can we trust Iran to uphold the deal this time? You said it's going to be signed on Friday. Is it different this time to previous agreements of previous administrations?
That's a good question. For the way that Iranian people view it, for them, the Islamic Republic has spent decades missing the opportunities that it had. The opportunities regarding lifting some sanctions, receiving money and spending the money in for tensions in Lebanon, Gaza. So whenever there was a chance that emerged, even another chance was Iranian people giving them the chance for reforms, but they missed it in the worst way possible, killing people. So whenever the chance was emerged to improve relations with the world, with people, to strengthen the economics, there are critics who are saying that it was squandered. So they say that whenever sanctions were eased, funds became available, much of the money were spent in the regional allies, in the proxy groups, rather being invested in the lives of Iranian people. So that's the history. And then the frustration is that among Iranian people is that they're asking a simple question. What does Lebanon have to do with us? What does Hezbollah have to do with us? Why should we be paying the price for the conflicts in Yemen and Gaza? So the critics are arguing for years that we as Iranians are paying the cost. So history has shown that there has been a very, very little chance of any sort of change. But if President Trump has been able to do it, I would say it's a very big thing.
Okay, you bring up Hezbollah. Could Lebanon be a sticking point, and could the Iran deal actually go ahead without resolving the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah?
That's exactly what I was describing. Like as the New Deal is being presented, it's a step forward, like changing for the regime's behavior in foreign policy. They still see the officials they're emphasizing support for regional causes. I would say 30 minutes ago, there was the news that Khatam al-Anbiya, they are talking about retaliation of the Israel attacks in Lebanon. So it looks like they don't want to get away from Lebanon. That has nothing to do with Iranian people. Nothing good in this deal that comes from Lebanon. They're not stepping away from that, and they are still threatening after this deal. So it raises the doubt about whether a real shift in policies is actually taking place, or same policies are simply being pursued in a different form from the Iranian regime.
Okay, what about the prospect of renewed engagement with the world in terms of Iran? Is that significant if Iran is part of the world economy, re-engaging with the world?
Well, if this agreement truly leads to Islamic Republic to truly, genuinely abandon its nuclear ambitions and scale it back, its missiles, proxy activities, and basically focus its resources on improving the lives of Iranians instead of supporting groups abroad and proxies, then I would say President Trump will have achieved something remarkable, unprecedented, something that has changed the behavior of the Islamic Republic in a way that many people thought it's going to be impossible to be achieved. And the Islamic Republic has a long history of missing these opportunities, as I explained. And then the recent loss of many senior leaders through the attacks, through the war, may have created this condition for change. So whatever that change lasts, if it's possible for these changes to last, it's something that needs to be seen. But whatever they so far, whatever they've done, their behavior up until now show that they are very reluctant to any sort of changes.
Okay, you're saying they're reluctant of change, but President Trump says the first tier, the first layer of the Iranian regime has been eliminated. The second layer has been eliminated. He says the third group is more rational. What do you say to those comments by President Trump?
This is not what Iranian people has seen for a long time. Iranian people gave the officials opportunities for changes. Maybe, for sure, it has been a significant change, like the attacks, the war. It has changed a lot of things. So it has a big impact on the future of the Islamic Republic if the pressure from the U.S. continues. So that does. So if Iran changes its behavior, it's no longer the Islamic Republic. So it's really the regime change. This is something we don't know. We haven't had that in the past. As people say we haven't had it. We cannot trust it anymore because we experienced that. We pursued this change for 47 years. It never happened. All the opportunities were gone. And but now this is something we need to wait and see. But overall, it's less optimism about it. But if this happens, I would say that which was worth it, like even the elimination of these ranks of politicians still was very important. The impact is huge, but still something needs to be seen.
Okay, just one final question here. On the topic of the World Cup, how do Iranians, especially those living outside the country, view Team Melli today? Is it still seen primarily as a source of national pride, or do some view the team as an extension of the regime?
Well, they see that this team has ties to the Islamic Republic. It's a sort of debate between them. You know, even before the mass killing of Iranian, like tens of thousands of them being killed a few months ago, I think it was 7-8 months ago. It happened back in January. Before that, still they were saying that there are hopes. We still like our national team. But when that happened and these players showed their ties to the Islamic Republic and didn't support the Iranian, I mean, as a whole, not everybody in the team, as a whole, when a lot of their players show that they're supporting Khamenei and they're supporting the regime's officials, then that was the moment that people of Iran felt that, okay, this is not Melli team, which is called national team. We call it Melli team. This is Mullah team. So that was the moment they said they are not representing us. They are representing mullahs. Then even FIFA banned the Iranian flag to the stadium. They were prohibited from bringing these national symbols to the stadium. So the Iranian people say all the world are against us. Like, you know, there are different groups that are pro-Palestine are against us. They are politicians in Western countries are against us. We don't want to have the Islamic Republic. We want to have our own nationality, our own identity, but that cannot happen. So it's not that people don't want their national team. It's just that the national team showed that they have ties with the Islamic Republic.
I see. Well, thank you today for your comments, Shahrzad. Appreciate your time.
Thank
you. The FBI disrupts an alleged plot targeting last weekend's UFC Freedom 250 event on the White House South Lawn. 5 people are now in custody. Investigators have identified 23 people as possible or part of a network. The plan involved explosive drones hitting nearby buildings, forcing a mass evacuation toward a planned sniper team. Then a second wave stormed the White House gate. Vice President JD Vance condemning the plot this morning, while urging people to tone down violent rhetoric.
This is what happens when people turn the rhetoric up so loud that disagreeing with somebody is a cause for violence. That's the place that we've come to, unfortunately, with too much of our political rhetoric. We got to tell everybody to tone it down. And I hate to say this, but it's true. You see more political violence and violent rhetoric coming from the left than the right these days. Everybody has a role to cut this stuff out. But I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues in Washington have got to look themselves in the mirror and say, why is so much of this political violence coming from our side of the spectrum? Maybe they can do something different.
The FBI says it learned of the threat on June 10th and arrested a suspect in Cincinnati. New court documents identified the suspect as 19-year-old Tyson Proper. Prosecutors say Proper spent $3,000 of his graduation money to buy lots of ammunition, guns, and extra magazines for the alleged attack. His mom had tipped off authorities over concerns about his purchases and online chats. Investigators found signal chats describing the plot, including plans to regroup in Virginia. FBI Director Kash Patel says the multi-state operation stopped the planned attacks cold. The Secret Service says it worked around the clock with the FBI to neutralize the threat. Here's Secret Service Deputy Director at a presser today.
We take all threats of a large nature very seriously, and we investigate them until we can validate 100% that it's no longer a threat. It was an active plot, and it's ongoing. Many of them did not sleep until the early mornings of yesterday and are back at it again today. They're doing great.
The UFC event drew more than 4,300 attendees, including 1,200 active duty service members. This comes amid a string of security threats targeting President Trump and administration officials. The Secret Service says there are still suspects at large, and they will keep working until everyone has been identified. Joining us now to discuss this further is David Burke, former U.S. Marine and police officer and a Republican candidate for the U.S. House. So David, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So I want to talk to you first about the gravity of this alleged plot, gravity of this situation. So Secret Service Deputy Director Matt Quinn called it a serious threat. So looking at what was planned by these alleged suspects, what is your reaction to this whole situation?
Well, thanks for having me on. My initial reaction is that this type of attack seems to be more than just sort of loosely affiliated individuals. Looking at sort of the geographic distance between each actor, sort of the age range, and what appears to be the general, I guess you could say, coordination between all of them kind of lends to itself. Where was this funded? Where was this funded? Who was sort of the initial, I guess, instigator? Who was the mastermind of something like this? From my understanding, this young man's mother reported his behavior as suspicious to the FBI, and good on her for being involved in her kid's life, sort of see something, say something, which law enforcement relies heavily on because, strained by the Fourth Amendment, it can't be everywhere and at all times. So kudos to the mother for actively reporting this, but it begs the bigger question. Is this a domestic terror cell? Is there some sort of international influence? As you know, there's been multiple attempts on the president's life, largely suspected to be coming from Iran. And also, this is sort of a larger commentary towards the threats that our elected officials are receiving every day, specifically Republican officials, as the vice president said.
Okay, so you mentioned multiple assassination attempts at President Trump. Are we seeing an increase in political violence or violence in general, threats or plots?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you're looking at some of the events that have occurred across the country, even at the local level, whether it's in Minnesota, whether it was in the assassination of the sort of politically affiliated staffer in Washington, D.C., you're seeing it, and it's extremely pervasive, and it is an issue. And this is a time for all leaders on both sides of the political spectrum to say, we need to tone it down. The other side necessarily isn't looking to overthrow and subvert democracy, and we need to be careful about the rhetoric that we use as leaders to be responsible. But it is growing. It is a concern, and someone who is in the sphere as a candidate, it's definitely not lost on me with someone who does have a young child and a wife about my safety. Thankfully, we're down here in the great state of Florida, so we're insulated from a lot of that, but it definitely weighs on my mind. Certainly.
So can you speak to us about where is the line? What is the balance? For example, if you want to criticize somebody's policy, for example, what can you say in such a way that it doesn't instigate any unstable individuals from taking violent action? Where is the line of that?
If you're looking to, say, reform entitlements, right? Let's say that as an example. The other side might say, you're looking to starve and kill grandma. That's not acceptable. If there's $500 billion worth of fraud that's occurring, presumed to be occurring within the entitlements, cleaning up fraud is not the equivalent of trying to kill grandma. And you see that coming from the left all the time here in the Democratic Party here, all the time here in the United States. Also equating Republicans who have the worldview of a 1990s Democrat, equating them to, Nazis also is extremely irresponsible. So you have to look at this to be able to kind of tone that down. Everything's not existential when you're talking about a policy disagreement. And there's this rush towards this extreme language that's contributing to this. But we're not really seeing it coming from the right as much as we are coming from the left. It's not okay in any fashion. But it's concerning. It seems to be primarily targeted at the president and Republican leadership.
So earlier you mentioned that federal authorities can't be everywhere at once due to the Fourth Amendment. So maybe you can talk to us about that a little bit. In terms of this situation specifically, how do you think the FBI and other law enforcement performed in terms of stopping this planned attack, allegedly?
I mean, let's zoom out and look at it. You've got multiple actors in multiple states. It sounds like to me, as I understand it, the initial lead came from a concerned mother in Kentucky. She turned that information over to the FBI or state officials, local officials. Typically, how that works. They had 4 days to turn this investigation around, which is impressive. That the coordination of the FBI and the FBI, the boots on the ground, the men and women in the rank and file, by and large, they love what they do and they just want to do the right thing. Not politicized like once you get to the higher level, the higher rungs of the FBI. These are just the men and women that just love their job and want to protect the people. You had 4 days. The level of coordination, they had an exfiltration plan. They were looking at using drones and it was coordinated. So for the FBI to be able to do that, it speaks volumes for the men and women at the state and the local levels who are able to relay that information quickly, get it to the proper channels, and something like this, multiple jurisdiction, multiple field offices, multiple bosses involved in that at supervisor level. So to do that, to get all of those moving parts and pieces down pat and rut this out was impressive.
So comparing to what we're seeing law enforcement do today, are there any changes compared to maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Because right now we have technologies that we didn't have before, right? Used by law enforcement and as well used by potential suspects.
Yeah, absolutely. Information is now more accessible through databases. There's technology out there that exists that uses, it uses commercial data that law enforcement can take advantage of without, once again, within consideration of the Fourth Amendment. Obviously, there's social media. It's not so siloized anymore as it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, where you have multiple actors in multiple jurisdictions. Communication was more difficult. Finding people was more difficult. I mean, most people post on social media, and law enforcement can use that to their advantage in certain instances like this. So, I mean, I would say information travels faster in almost every sector of our world, and it definitely travels just as fast in law enforcement with the tools available to them. So I would say, let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this may have been more difficult to accomplish. But once again, with information traveling the way it is, certainly easier now.
Okay, just one final question here, Dave. You mentioned rhetoric earlier. Do you think that is the primary factor here that is, making individuals who disagree on policy, they increasingly view the opposing side as a threat to the country's future? Do you think that is due to rhetoric? What are other potential factors as well?
I think there's also there's a radical portion of society who is completely, whether they've been indoctrinated to sort of believe that America is the great evil. And when you look at, let's specifically focus on America. If you look at America as having no virtue, that we're not a virtuous society, that we're not a virtuous sort of idea, it's easy to be able to find yourself in a position where violence is the only viable solution, whether you're looking at it from, the mindset of a revolutionary who wants to generally overthrow the sort of free market capitalist system that we have, or you're sort of a deranged individual who just generally is discontent with society. Maybe they don't see themselves having options, and they just kind of want to, just burn the house down. So I think it's a multitude of factors. Rhetoric contributes to it. The disdain for America that's coming out of sort of the radical. The more radical cohort is contributing to it as well, and also you've got people who maybe they don't believe the system works for them anymore, and they just that exists on both sides, and they just once again kind of want to burn the house down. So I think and you can take it several layers even deeper than that, which we don't have time for. But if I had an assessment, that would be my sort of assessment of the situation.
And I think suspects in this case also said that they need to do something about the U.S., something along the lines of, sort of burning the house down, like what you said, and then having the U.S. rebuild itself. I think that was one of the points that the suspect said in this case as well. So, let's leave it there for today, David. It's been good to speak with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
The Justice Department reacts after California Governor Gavin Newsom claims he is under investigation. People familiar with the matter confirmed the ongoing investigations to NTD. They confirmed there are several investigations. One of them is related to the tax activities of the governor's wife. Another is related to Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson. She pleaded guilty to fraud last month, and the investigation originated from the Eastern District of California in Sacramento in 2025 and not through the main Justice Department. They told NTD that the probes originated from whistleblower statements. The California governor announced yesterday that federal agents have spoken with family, friends, and former employees and demanded documents. He claims that President Trump is targeting him, which the DOJ denies. 15 people have been charged for violently impeding federal law enforcement in Minnesota. Federal officials say these people are members of Direct Action Minnesota, an Antifa group.
Direct Action Minnesota members deployed what they called hard and soft blockades against federal law enforcement, as well as against Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies. Direct Action Minnesota shut down operations at the federal Whipple building, a government building just north of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport and the main hub for several federal agencies. Members of their hard blockade team used vehicles, RV trailers that they would overturn, check hedgehogs, and ice blocks that they would throw at law enforcement to obstruct roads used by law enforcement near the Whipple building in order to impede the movement of law enforcement.
U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen says the 15 defendants organized and participated in actions against ICE and other law enforcement on January 23rd and March 1st. The U.S. Attorney says the Antifa members were highly organized, and their actions were designed to create chaos, disrupt operations, and threaten the safety of officers. They are charged with conspiracy to impede or injure a federal officer, solicitation to commit a crime of violence, interstate threats, interstate stalking, assault on a federal officer, and destruction of government property. The Justice Department says the charges reflect a broad federal effort to address organized, lawless behavior. They note that 13 defendants are in custody while 2 are still at large. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says it arrested a number of what it calls the worst of the worst criminals across the country over the weekend. Some of those picked up were offenders convicted of child sexual assault, domestic violence, and drug trafficking. NTD's Daniel Monahan has a closer look at the operation.
ICE says its officers were conducting coordinated enforcement actions targeting violent offenders and drug traffickers, while Americans gathered in Washington, D.C. for UFC Freedom 250. Among those arrested, ICE identifies Miguel Guracieta Jaimes, a criminal illegal alien from Mexico, convicted in Texas of aggravated sexual assault of a child. Also arrested was Noe Moreno Salazar, a criminal illegal alien from Mexico, convicted in Illinois of criminal sexual abuse, aggravated unlawful use of a loaded weapon, and drug possession. And in California, Ramon R. Castillo, a criminal illegal alien from Mexico, was convicted of lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14. ICE also says it arrested a North Carolina suspect accused of being a commander in 2 designated foreign terrorist organizations. Authorities say Felipe Aquia, also known as Don, was stopped during a traffic operation on June 5th, allegedly attempted to flee, and led officers on a brief pursuit before crashing and being arrested on foot. ICE says intelligence links him to leadership roles in Brazil's Primeiro Comando da Capital and Comando Vermelho gangs, and that he was wanted internationally for criminal association and extortion. Officials also say he was attempting to flee to Mexico and had been holding his wife against her will. A handgun, electronics, and cash were seized during the arrest. He now faces state and federal charges. Border Czar Tom Homan is also warning cartels to take notice, saying the administration will show no quarter to organizations targeting the United States, speaking on Newsmax.
Before President Trump was elected, I said the president is going to wipe the cartels off the face of the earth. He's going to attack these terrorist organizations. There's a plan.
Holman says thousands of Americans have been victimized by groups like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, which have been designated terrorist organizations.
What's brilliant about President Trump, and I've worked for 6 different presidents, 11 different administrations, we always play the home game, right? We always play the home game. President Trump, he's playing the away game. So, when we locked the border down, we hurt these organizations. So we knew to take the maritime. Now the Navy and the Coast Guard are taking them out in the maritime. And he's going to play the away game. He's going to take them out where they lie. And it is not over. President Trump had made a promise to American people. He's going to keep that promise.
Meanwhile, the FBI says it has taken down another child predator and sex trafficker. Agents say 23-year-old Christiane Morris recruited teenage girls, supplied them with drugs, and posted explicit ads. The youngest victim was 15.
Morris was sentenced to 32 years in prison following an investigation by the FBI and the Houston Police Department. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
An ICE agent injured in New Jersey yesterday after a suspect struck him with a vehicle during an attempted arrest. Officials say the agent discharged his firearm at the vehicle before the suspect drove away. It happened about 35 miles north of Atlantic City on Route 72. Authorities say the suspect has not been located and the FBI is leading the investigation. Police say there is currently no known threat to public safety. The incident comes amid ongoing tensions between federal immigration authorities and New Jersey officials. DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin has suggested the administration could suspend customs operations at some airports in states that limit cooperation with ICE. Meanwhile, White House border czar Tom Homan saying New York City should expect a major increase in ICE enforcement activity. A recently discovered tunnel connecting Mexico to Southern California is drawing renewed attention to cartel operations at the southern border. American Thought Leaders host Jan Jekielek spoke with Sarah Carter, director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, about the threat posed by cartels.
Authorities recently uncovered a trafficking tunnel running from Mexico to the San Diego area. Sarah Carter, director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, spoke with American Thought Leaders host Jan Jekielek about the discovery and her 2026 drug control strategy.
Well, these are highly sophisticated tunnels. So I started my work, more than 20 years ago. I would say probably more like 25 years ago when I started covering the southern border, with Mexico. And one of the most interesting things about how those tunnels are built is that not only are they highly sophisticated, they take a lot of equipment, right? So you got to be able to dig, you got to be able to move the dirt out, you got to be able to get oxygen in. They've got usually rail systems where they move the narcotics or the humans that they're trafficking. When you have something that's under 55 feet of ground, they've been building it for years, right? We don't know how long they've been moving narcotics through there. Hundreds of millions of dollars of narcotics have probably made their way through this tunnel. Imagine the national security implications of that.
Carter, who's also known as the White House drug czar, says authorities are using technology and specialized teams to locate and shut down these underground routes.
We have technology that we are using to try to keep up with some of these bad actors, right? Sinaloa is famous for it. And we also have our law enforcement, our U.S. Customs and Border Protection. We have tunnel teams. So we are constantly playing this game of cat and mouse. But now, under President Trump, we're on the offensive, right? We're not just reactionary. We're on the offensive. So we are actively seeking out these tunnels.
Carter says the threat extends far beyond the border, linking cartel trafficking operations to the ongoing fentanyl crisis, impacting communities across the country.
Just today, a friend of mine was saying, could you imagine if a bomb was dropped every year in the United States and 100,000 people were just wiped off the planet, just every year, or 68,000 or 79,000, we would be in a state of shock. We wouldn't even know how to deal with that, right? It would be on the news every day. It would be the headlines. But for some reason, this did not become the headlines until young Americans and Americans from all economic backgrounds just started dying. We have adversaries that have contaminated our supply chain. We have cartels that could care less. I hate hearing that statement, but why do they want their customer to die? They do not care because there's always another customer around the corner. The majority of Americans do not use drugs. We've become reliant a lot. We're, kind of a dependent society on our medical industry, right? But as far as illicit drugs, the majority don't. And hopefully with this presidency, we're making a shift, but we can't let the foot off the gas. We have to continue. 68,000 this year is a big decrease for us, right? From, the 112,000 plus that we lost, but it's still 68,000 lives.
Alongside efforts to dismantle the cartels and stopping drugs from entering the country, Carter emphasizes another strategy.
What do the cartels want more than anything? They want power and money. That is what keeps them alive. That's their heartbeat, is their power and their money, and they're vicious. They have no regard for human life. They have no regard for the nation states that they operate in. And we have to be just as tough on them, if not tougher.
And beyond enforcement, Carter says her faith-based approach will be a key tool in helping to save lives and curb drug addiction.
Military officials are investigating the crash of a B-52 bomber. It happened yesterday in California and claimed 8 lives. Here's what happened.
Edwards Air Force Base experienced a horrible tragedy, and we lost 8 great Americans.
Military officials laying out the tragic details of a horrific crash on Monday morning. An Air Force B-52 bomber went down shortly after taking off from Edwards Air Force Base in California, roughly 100 miles northeast of Los Angeles.
It was a B-52 that was on initial takeoff, supporting the radar modernization program. It took off, and immediately after takeoff, crashed and burst into flames.
Emergency crews responded immediately to the crash, which sent a towering plume of black smoke up into the sky. The smoke trail visible across the horizon for miles. The base's runway left with a massive blackened scar.
After reviewing the footage of the crash, it was deemed that this was an unrecoverable crash and unsurvivable.
The impact and fire so extreme that in video of the aftermath, it's difficult to make out any distinct parts of the wreckage remaining.
At that point, we went into the notification process.
All 8 crew members were killed.
This was a mixed crew. This was a mixed crew of military, government civilians, and government contractors supporting this test mission.
Officials yesterday started the process of notifying victims' families. Boeing, the manufacturer of the aircraft, said 2 of its employees were on the flight. The military will start investigating the crash, but an official said exact details won't be publicly available for roughly 6 months. United Airlines is taking to the skies with a patriotic tribute ahead of America's 250th birthday. United unveiling a special commemorative aircraft design while also highlighting its efforts to recruit military pilots. Here's more on that.
Just ahead of America's 250th anniversary, United Airlines is rolling out a special red, white, and blue aircraft design to celebrate the milestone. The airline unveiled its new Stars and Stripes design yesterday at Washington Dulles International Airport alongside Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
One of the luckiest things that ever happened to me was to be born here in the United States of America, and I'm incredibly grateful to all the founding fathers who created something so special 250 years ago that we get to celebrate.
The design has been painted on a Boeing 787-10 and a Boeing 737-800. The aircraft features red and white stripes and 50 stars across the rear fuselage. Both planes also carry commemorative plaques honoring United employees who are in the military. United says the aircraft will begin flying this summer. The unveiling also highlighted the airline's military pilot hiring program. Nearly 600 military pilots have started flying for United since 2024. The airline expects 500 more by the end of next year.
We also are a critical part of really spreading the culture, the values, the traditions that make our country great around the globe. And of everything that we do at United, that may be the thing that I am most proud of.
United says it employs more than 8,000 military veterans, including roughly 1,500 members of the National Guard and Reserve. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy praising United.
As Americans, it's in a time where we can sometimes be a bit divided. Our birthday of this great country unites us. It brings us together. is so cool, and to see companies lean into this celebration as well it's exhilarating.
American Airlines is also preparing a commemorative aircraft design for the anniversary, while Delta plans to mark the occasion with a special graphic on its fleet.
SpaceX has acquired the fast-growing AI coding tool Cursor in a $60 billion all-stock deal. Cursor is a competitor of Anthropic's Claude, and OpenAI's Codex. According to the company's website, Cursor is used by 64% of Fortune 500 firms. SpaceX said in April that Cursor had given SpaceX the right to buy it. The deal is seen as a big step for SpaceX to try to match up to market leaders OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. CEO Elon Musk has been pushing SpaceX to be more AI-focused. SpaceX combined with Musk's xAI earlier this year with the ambition to eventually launch data centers into space. A new American-made technology is promising to revolutionize school safety. Drones designed to confront active shooters within seconds are heading to classrooms in Florida and Georgia this fall. NTD's Jack Bradley has more on the pilot program and the strong support it's receiving.
3 drones emerged from boxes mounted in a school building. Within seconds, they're racing toward an active shooter. The drones can sound sirens, spray pepper gel, and even strike a shooter at high speeds while police respond. The system is called Campus Guardian Angel, and it's now expanding into schools in Florida and Georgia through state-funded programs.
Our goal then is to respond in 5 seconds, to be on the shooter in 15 seconds, and to degrade or incapacitate in 60 seconds.
Justin Marston says the idea came after the Uvalde school shooting and from seeing how small drones have been used in Ukraine.
If we could just use less lethal effects, the drone doesn't have to have a gun mounted on it. It's very effective.
The company stores groups of drones throughout a school and operates them remotely from a command center in Austin, Texas, with elite pilots, including top drone racers and former Navy SEALs, using live feeds.
We have 5 of the top 10 drone racing pilots in the nation, and they can do unbelievable things with drones.
During recent demonstrations, school staff, parents, students, and law enforcement officers watched the drones race through hallways and confront a simulated shooter. Many came away impressed by the speed of the response.
As a father, it allows me to know that my kids are being taken care of when they're away from me, and gives me a sense of mind that they're going to be okay.
I would say you have to see this. There's a high level, a degree of confidence in watching these guys drive these drones that it's different than watching your 7-year-old drive a drone.
Every second matters during an active shooter situation. Unlike officers who may be minutes away, the drones are already inside the school.
Instead of you running down a corridor, not knowing what's happening, having to put your life on the line, we don't care if we get shot. You know, we are a lump of plastic.
Last week, Georgia approved 5 school districts to participate in the pilot program. Florida became the first state to launch the program last year. Marston compares the system to fire sprinklers, a safety measure schools hope they'll never need, but want available in an emergency.
This is not a one-off, hardly ever happens once in a blue moon. Now it's the #1 most likely cause of death in kids. If we could help address that, it would be a really meaningful impact.
The company says researchers from multiple universities are expected to independently study the program as the pilot projects move forward. Jack Bradley, NTD News.
The Education Department is shifting civil rights oversight to the Justice Department and the Department of Health and Human Services. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said the move will allow federal responsibilities to fall under the agencies best positioned to support them. The Education Department says it will partner with HHS to oversee special education and rehabilitative services. The department will work with the DOJ to oversee civil rights enforcement, student privacy protection, and training and advisory services. The Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services manages billions of dollars in grants, overseeing state compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The Office for Civil Rights investigates discrimination complaints at the nation's schools and universities. President Trump initially moved to shutter the Education Department, but doing so requires an act of Congress. McMahon has since formed agreements with other federal agencies to handle much of the department's responsibilities. The Treasury Department is warning Americans, especially seniors, to stay alert for scams and financial fraud. As part of Elder Justice Awareness Month, The administration is highlighting methods to stop and avoid scammers.
Last year alone, the Federal Trade Commission received more than 375,000 reports of government imposters with total reported losses of $917 million. In extreme cases, victims lost their entire life savings. Many Americans' fondest memories from childhood are with grandparents, great aunts and uncles, as well as older neighbors and friends. It is our duty to ensure that our seniors can live out their golden years without fear of fraud, abuse, or being taken advantage of by malicious actors.
The Elder Justice Coordinating Council, a federal panel, says scammers often pose as government employees or representatives of well-known businesses. The council says scammers use the names of real government employees, give badge numbers, and send out official-looking letters with seals from made-up government agencies. The council advises people never to send money, cryptocurrency, or gold in response to an unexpected call or message. The FBI also urging families and caregivers to learn how to recognize and prevent elder fraud schemes. A federal judge who was reprimanded for misconduct has recused herself from hearing the Justice Department's lawsuit seeking Georgia voter rolls. NTD's Arlene Richards reports.
A federal judge in Atlanta has stepped aside from the Justice Department's lawsuit over Georgia voter records. U.S. District Judge Eleanor Ross ruled in a Monday order that based on the unique facts of the case, she believed recusal was appropriate. Ross is overseeing the election records case filed by the Justice Department against Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. The Justice Department sued Raffensperger after he refused to release statewide voter lists. Raffensperger has said that Georgia law prohibits the release of voters' confidential personal information unless certain qualifications are met, and that the federal government hadn't met those conditions. The Justice Department had asked Ross to step back from the case in a May 29th filing, pointing to a Bloomberg Law report that said she had been privately reprimanded by a judicial counsel for misconduct. The misconduct included reports that she had improperly attended a primary election party for Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Willis prosecuted President Trump and others in a case related to challenges of the 2020 election. The Justice Department argued that any objective, reasonable observer would see Ross's presence at Willis's election night party as an endorsement of her election and her actions in office. Ross rejected arguments that her attendance at the event amounted to partisan endorsement of the Democratic Party. But she said the court could not discount the possibility that an objective observer would view her attendance at the party as suggesting support for Willis's positions on election integrity, and that it could create doubt about her impartiality in the voter records case. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Vice President JD Vance appeared on The View today to discuss his new book as well as his views on faith, politics, and policy. First, he took a question on the economy. Let's take a listen.
Now, you came into office with clear momentum, but when I talk to my friends and family who supported you and the president and still support you and the president, one issue comes up time and time again, and it's the economy. Inflation's up, wages are down, gas prices are starting to drop at news of this Iran deal, which we will get to.
Sure.
What can you say to voters who trusted you to lower costs on day one, and will they be satisfied by November?
Well, I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. The thing that
The View co-hosts pressed Vance on a number of issues, including the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files and efforts to tackle illegal immigration. Vance was also asked about his new memoir, Communion: Finding My Way Back to Faith, as well as his shift from critic to supporter of President Trump. Communion was released today. More states holding elections today. Washington, D.C. will choose a new mayor this year. Georgia and Alabama are holding runoffs to choose candidates for the November ballot, and a special election in California. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Republicans in Georgia are trying to flip a U.S. Senate seat currently held by Democrat freshman Jon Ossoff. And this runoff race today will test how loyal Georgia voters are to their current governor, Brian Kemp, versus President Trump. Kemp has endorsed former football coach Derek Dooley for the Republican nomination, but President Trump has endorsed Congressman Mike Collins. As for the governor's race, both Trump and Kemp are pushing for Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones to take the nomination, but he faces a tough challenge from businessman Rick Jackson. Whoever wins will face the former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, in November. There's also a runoff election happening in Alabama today. Voters will choose between Trump-backed candidate and Congressman Barry Moore and a former Navy SEAL Jared Hudson. The seat is safely red, though Democrats are also choosing their candidate for the November ballot. I'm also watching Washington, D.C. today. Voters will choose a new mayor this year, and for the first time, they're using a ranked choice voting system.
There's so many different names and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just feel it's going to, a lot of people are going to get confused with it.
Right. Our politics are not just binary. They're not just like yes, no. Our politics, all of our politics are on a spectrum. And so when we're voting, it's nice to reflect that.
I was like, why? Why are we doing this? If you pick the first person, if they win, then that's it. Why are we doing second, third, and all of that?
Now, this area is heavily blue, of course, but we're watching to see how far to the left voters in Washington, D.C. are willing to go. One candidate in this race is former at-large Councilman Kenyon McDuffie. He's running to keep the status quo here in Washington, D.C. The policies that he favors are similar to those of the current mayor, Muriel Bowser. Now, he's up against the Democratic Socialist Janice Lewis George. The outcome of this race will determine whether or not another major city in America is run by a Democratic socialist. There's also a special election in California to fill the seat of former Congressman Eric Swalwell, who resigned after sexual misconduct allegations surfaced against him. Now, this election today will immediately fill Swalwell's seat until the November general election. And in California, during the June 2nd primary, voters already waited on this race that's full of women candidates. The best-known Democratic contenders include State Senator Aisha Wahab, former Dublin Mayor Melissa Hernandez. They topped the ticket in the June 2nd primary. The top Republicans are Wendy Huang, a former tech executive, and Dina Maldonado, a small business owner. Now, this seat is expected to stay blue, but it's a question of whether any candidate will be able to get the 50% of the vote needed to win. Otherwise, they'll face another election in August. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Voters in Georgia and Washington, D.C. are participating in important primary and runoff elections that could shape major races in November. Vice President JD Vance says he will discuss a 2028 presidential run after midterm elections. And FBI disrupted a planned violent attack targeting a UFC event at the White House. Joining us now to discuss is Mike Leon, Director of Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So, good afternoon. It's about time.
Look at this. Huh?
We had this segment in person. So, Tony, Mike, welcome. So, let's just start here. I don't know. We might be seeing a return of Trump and Kemp rivalry because we have a face-off between Trump-endorsed Mike Collins and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp backed Derek Dooley, right? So, Mike, may I start with you today? So talk to us about Trump's influence with Republican primary voters and Kemp's influence with Georgia Republicans.
Well, therein lies the drama that's unfolding in the state of Georgia, because if we all know, the president and Kemp have not seen eye to eye on a couple of items, and we've seen already in other primary races where the president's impact has had. Now, here's the thing, and I know we're going to laugh about this, but it's not funny. College football is very big in the state of Georgia. You know this, Tony. Mm-hmm. Derek Dooley, not a good college football coach. I know that we're making light of that, and Tommy Tuberville is an example in the state of Alabama as somebody who got endorsed by President Trump and became obviously a nominee and then eventually a Senate candidate. But there is a little bit of that at play with respect to this story, obviously because of Dooley, and I know we'll talk about it later, an outsider who's never been in politics before versus obviously who's he running against. So it'll be interesting to see if the Trump effect happens here in Georgia, because remember, Georgia flipped for a period of time in 20, and then it went back in 24. I'd be interested to see what Tony thinks about Georgia and if it stays red with respect to the endorsement that Trump made.
So, Tony, we've seen the power of Trump's endorsement time and time again in other states and elections. Do you think this time is the same or different in Georgia?
I think that this is a little different, and it's surprising to say this because it's not Trump that's the guy that's backing the kind of really out there football coaching, football playing individual. Think of Herschel Walker, right? When you had a candidate that again went forward big into the college sporting space and then was expected to just be a shoo-in. And that was that election Republicans learned that you can't just put anyone on the ballot and call it good. Now it's Trump who has moderated in the candidates that he has supported. This is a case where you have Mike Collins, who has gained 2 points. So has Derek Dooley. He's also gained 2 points. As we're getting closer, Mike has just a slight edge at 50 to 48, according to the Insider Advantage poll. I'm not sure right now if we're going to see some major dramatic shift. I know that Georgians are looking for results-based politicians. And again, whether you want to call this a huge change of normalcy, it is Trump supporting the candidates that are running on the data and what they plan to do, and it's Brian Kemp supporting the other. That's strange and unusual.
It's a little flip-flopping.
A little bit.
So Mike, let me ask you, who do you think voters may favor? Because we've seen, you mentioned that Dooley is an outsider, right? We've seen this in Maine with Plattner, who's also an outsider. But he's got baggage, right? So it's a little different there, but voters ultimately favored Plattner. Do you think this will be a similar case? Who do you think voters will favor?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't compare the two only because if we think about Maine and the makeup of the state and independence in the state, I think it's a little bit different to compare Plattner's situation. Also, I think older candidates right now, and Janet Mills is an older candidate, even though she's governor of the state, I think old is starting to not be as attractive anymore, as appealing. We'll talk about the Georgia Senate race. If you look at Ossoff and Warnock, they're both, under 53, I think it is 54. Warnock, right, is in that category. Ossoff is 39 years old. So I think younger candidates are starting to make a trend. But I think you can't compare necessarily Plattner and Dooley other than they're outsiders, because Plattner, military background, grew up in Maine. Dooley obviously has the College Football Association. And I'm kidding about it, but I'm glad you brought up the Herschel Walker example, because college football voters in the South, we always see ads populated towards college football games and the focus when it comes to Southern candidates. I know when I went to Tennessee to visit my sister in Columbia, all I saw was ads around that district and that runoff that happened.
Leadership, culture,
discipline. It's all interwoven in that. So it is interesting, to Tony's point, though, that the kind of establishment Republican Kemp, who's been governor for a few terms, he's backing the Dooley type candidate, where normally it would be the Trump that would be backing that type of person. It is interesting to see that flip.
So who do you think has a better chance? Who do you think voters are going to?
I got to tell you, I think that Collins is gonna pull it out. I hesitate to make some kind of predictions. I really think that Trump's candidate is going to pull forward here because, again, just saying, oh well, hey, you're Georgians, you like football, don't you? I don't think that's working, and I think that this really comes across as the establishment frame of the party trying to follow after what the President of the United States made successful from 2016 forward. You see the same with some of the left wing. I'm sure you've seen, whether it's Mazie Hirono, senator from Hawaii, whenever she sits down to record a hip happening video for the kids, hey guys, I'm Mazie Hirono, and you just want to crawl under a chair because it hurts. That kind of stuff that you see the older members of the party trying to do to appeal to the youths. Again, this is a step behind the Trump team, and they're not pushing radical, crazy, like out there, hyper-populist people. They're just very focused on Georgian voters, on the national political framing of it as well. I'm not seeing the downside here. And I'll also echo with what Mike said. I don't think the Plattner being an outsider is not really as much a factor here, at least in the positives or the negatives for him, at least as far as independents are concerned.
You don't think the late endorsement has any negative impact on Collins?
To Georgians? Outside of Atlanta, maybe? I doubt it. I would need to, outside of maybe Savannah as well.
As long as there's an endorsement, regardless what time it happened, it's an advantage for whoever Trump endorses.
In the primary in Georgia, yes. In the general, no. In the general, Trump endorsements don't work. But in the primary, they are still heavy hitting. I mean, every election's shown it. I wouldn't have even put that much stock. I have tweets up saying it didn't hold that much stock. I was wrong. In the primary, they still swing really hard. It's Barry Bonds.
And do you know why that is? It's because a lot of people, you see voter turnout is so low in the primaries. A reminder from somebody with the biggest platform, who's the current president of the United States, it could motivate that X percentage to actually go to the polls. Whereas in the general, I already know that I have to go vote November 4th.
So, Mike, who do you think has a better chance in November against Ossoff?
I think Collins, right? Collins is up against it.
Up against Ossoff, yes.
I think Collins would have the better of the Collins Dooley if we're matching it up. Again, I think what's happening, it's really state by state. But I do think that we're seeing a lot of different people try to enter the political foray. I mean, you and I were talking about this off stage. We've entered the political foray from different backgrounds, television production, science teacher. So we're doing it ourselves, but it's different to jump into public politics because then you actually have to talk about policies and how you implement those things. I would think, given the recent Real Clear polling and some of the polling around direction of the country, favorability of the two parties, I think, but I always say this and I'm wrong, so I'll say it again. I think people want to return back to a little bit more of normalcy and drill into the policies. And I think Derek Dooley just doesn't have any of that acumen and experience. Now, can he potentially coach on Saturday against Tennessee? Sure. Can he become a senator and actually, work with other senators? Because it's a group project in Congress. It's not a sole individual. A campaign is different than actually working with other members in Congress. He doesn't have that type of acumen or experience that Collins has.
So I've read some articles from left-leaning outlets who are saying that Dooley has a better chance against Ossoff, but you're agreeing with Mike that Collins has a better chance against Ossoff.
I think so, again, because when you get into a general election, voters are looking for results. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want to see. There are things that voters naturally believe that Republicans do a better job maintaining. And even though the President of the United States is underwater with Americans on some of how he's handled the economy over the last term, there are still a lot of Republicans who are not underwater with voters on that issue. And I think that when you're looking at this election, voters who have seen Ossoff's record, which again, ran as more of a moderate, maybe wasn't as moderate as he claimed to be. I know that according to some of the Georgia polling, that's not going off as well. I think when you put Collins up against him, you have a guy who is more likable on the competency stage rather than saying, hey, trust me, you liked it when I did football stuff, right? In a general, especially right now when people are a little tired of the theater of it all, I would say it's results. Mike would say it's a return to the norms of politics. Either way, voters are still exhausted with the kind of state fairism of state elections.
Okay, let's move on to a different topic. I have a couple of them today. I want to make full use of the time that you guys are here in person. So let's talk about the DC situation. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser not seeking re-election. So how do you think the voters are going to choose the city's next mayor? Is there evidence that Democratic Socialist candidates are gaining traction in some parts of the country, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's trying to mirror the Mamdani effect, at least when you're running a campaign, in terms of how you grassroots effort it and you champion certain things, whether it be free buses, grocery stores that are, owned by the city and operated by the city, one in each borough as a pilot program. I think there are certain things that they're pie in the sky on the campaign trail, but then potentially on implementation, yeah, let's try it out. Here's the problem. DC is under home rule, so it's technically under Congress's control. And I think Muriel Bowser ran into a lot of these issues that, and you would know this too as well, that a lot of voters were just like, she's kind of tied here. There's not much that she can do without congressional approval when it comes to certain things. And I think that's kind of left out in the conversation when we're talking about DC. Yeah, we could have some progressive candidates and they could have some pie in the sky, but it truly needs to be aligned with what the makeup of Congress is when it comes to Democratic or Republican control. So until we know that, we really won't know. It doesn't matter what candidate they elect, because then they won't be able to pass anything with respect to congressional approval.
Okay, so talk to us about the candidates. One of them, a Democratic Socialist.
So I think there's a broader trend of a lot of Democratic Socialist candidates who are promising everything. You want the moon, Mary? I'll throw a lasso and get it down for you. That kind of pie in the sky stuff. I'm glad you like that.
Yeah, I do.
So you see the same in Wisconsin. There's someone who is saying, hey, you know how the Knicks won? Well, we can do this with the Packers. And I'm not joking, that's a socialist Democrat candidate up in Wisconsin who's pitching that in the gubernatorial. So we see a lot of those trying to capture the Mamdani effect. There is a growing desire for a lot of the congressional Republicans to end the home rule run of DC. And so what I think you're seeing is a lot of what Michael alluded to here with the tiptoeing through kind of past all of the little landmines here. Because if a DC mayor starts getting a little bit spicy and says, hey, you're not going to send the National Guard in to stand outside of Union Station, well, then maybe home rule disappears. And that's something that has to be considered. And by the way, Mamdani faced a much lesser kind of bit of pressure from Kathy Hochul up in New York. These things do come from time to time. Indianapolis, their mayor against the governor of Indiana, for example. Those things, I'm less interested in the DC mayoral election as how progressive is the candidate going to be. I am more interested to see how much of a train wreck ranked choice voting is going to be in how the different parts of Washington, D.C. feel represented. Because you get into a name recognition, I know this is like really niche into the political chemistry. Name recognition dominates ranked choice voting, and it historically alienates smaller communities with candidates that would put more support in. I think that might be more of a controversy after this election than anyone's really said so far.
Okay, so your view, is it positive or negative ranked choice election voting?
Well, I mean, we had it here in New York with ranked choice voting, and we've got Mamdani out of it. I think that...
So universally awful.
That is not what I said. No, but I do think, and I had somebody on my show, I forget the name of the company that specializes in ranked choice voting and the states that they implemented. I believe it was in the state of Washington, actually, not in D.C. And he came on my show and talked about why ranked choice voting should be implemented more, right? Because normally, a lot of the times when you're taking a test in school, right, of these 4 choices, blah, 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 which one is the correct choice? And then we rank it off of that. I don't know how I feel about ranked choice voting, but I do know we need to shake the makeup of how we vote in this country, especially for candidates, because there are candidates where you would potentially use somebody for something else, another slot. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I like that candidate. I don't want to lose them. I'd rather they finish in XYZ position, and then it goes to the runoff. Georgia's a perfect example. You don't reach a certain threshold. Maine would have been a good example of that, right? Maine has that, and you would have had a runoff if he didn't reach over 50%. So there's goods and bads to it. I know I'm kind of circling around here. It's because I don't have a great answer for you, because there are some states that implement it, and there are some states that don't.
I do. I have your answer.
Okay, here we go.
I hate ranked choice voting. I hate runoff elections because it incentivizes laziness. I don't like the idea. You should understand the gravity of electing someone. It shouldn't be a wish-washy kind of mealy, well, I really like this person, but also this person's hair is
not
really
not in a general, not when you get
True,
to
but the primary, as we've talked about before, the primary is where the sausage is made. And primary elections being made more accessible to where we're going to, well, I kind of, but I don't think that needs more of that. There should be more of a focus on those in the country taking an active role in primaries, and it be a cultural push rather than saying, we're going to lower the barrier for entry, because if we just put a new coat of paint on the DMV, that's going to make everyone want to go to the DMV. I don't think that's the move.
I think the counter argument to that is just that maybe I haven't learned enough about that candidate, and they've survived to the next round where I could learn more about them through the ranked choice voting process. I think that may just be one little counter on that.
Dawn, we have the candidates compete in a season of Survivor, and then you learn more. Yeah, from the White House lawn. Nice.
Okay. There you go. So Tony, you said you're not too focused on the candidates, but President Trump apparently is very focused, because he says if a Democratic socialist wins, he's going to potentially take back D.C. What are your thoughts on that?
Hey, I didn't know that the president said that, but that sounds a lot like what I had just alluded to as the threat, again, that Mike pointed out, that Muriel Bowser, when she had to tiptoe around the Trump administration because she recognized a lot of the positive effects. Vice President Vance was just talking about that with the ladies of The View, where he said clearly crime has gone down. That benefits people of every community. And Mayor Bowser of D.C. did latch on to that and said, hey, it is safer for various and our most diverse communities here in Washington. And I don't think that a Democratic Socialist candidate who runs along the line of Mamdani, who does have a lot of political acumen to go in front of the president and kind of sweet talk him a little bit, a lot of other Democratic Socialist candidates, like from Washington State, for example, you might find a very rude gesture and then home rule will end. People don't understand how much that is a grace allotted by Congress because of apathy. Once that ends, it's gone. And I don't trust Congress to run it either.
All right. Let's move on for that. One more topic here, Mike. Yep. Federal authorities say a group of about 20 individuals communicated through encrypted messaging apps and allegedly discussed using explosive drones over the White House, and as well as talking about shooting people in the crowd. So this was in reference to the UFC event that happened at the White House on Trump's birthday. Does this seem like it to you, Mike? We're seeing an increase in political violence or threats or plots or attacks on the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just violence in general. Like, let's remove the word political because violence in general is bad. And I'm glad that federal authorities, and this is the first I'm learning about, if they've caught them, right? You said, according to the reports, that they have caught these folks. Five of them using these encrypted services. This is like when we found out about the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer. It doesn't matter about the R or D next to the name. It's about the act, right? And I was talking about this with a conservative influencer the other day about the Puerto Rican Day parade was this past Sunday, and I was able to attend. And she's like, I don't really go to a lot of parades because I fear for this type of thing to happen, where a plot that is not uncovered by authorities actually happens, impacts a lot of people, lives are lost. So I think, again, we get a lot of threats that happen aimed at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's all terrible. I'm glad that authorities caught these folks. We see a rise and an uptick in it. I don't know what we can do from a deterrence standpoint, but it is good to see that this was caught before anything actually happened. And I know, speaking to people that were down in D.C., that area and that perimeter was very secure in terms of how you were able to get in if you were a fan, if you were trying to manipulate tickets or anything like that. And just somebody myself who works in live events and production and deals with security and things like that, I know how arduous of a process it is to make sure everything's on the up and up so people can attend and be safe. So I'm glad that everything, kind of ran smoothly and didn't really have a hiccup with respect to that being, happening.
All right, Tony, I can go on for another 20 minutes, but I have to get your final thoughts. Do you think we're seeing more individuals where they don't just disagree on policy? They're increasingly seeing the opposite side as a threat to the country's future.
I do, and the cause why this continues and why it's not deterred comes from two things. Number one, we have to address the elephant in the room that there is a radical group that has literally saddled themselves as the Democratic Socialists of the party, who use explicitly violent terminology to directly call for violent revolution. Graham Plattner, case in point. Bernie Sanders, case in point. They will refute. They'll say, oh, I don't like political violence. I don't like it. But then they will use the exact violence that will end up charting out the very manifestos of these individuals. The reason it doesn't stop is because the worst that these guys can get is a federally funded timeout. I'm not being silly when I say this. I'm not trying to be dramatic for the cameras. Individuals that are convicted of plotting a terror event should be hanged. I don't mean that in a dramatic fashion. I'm not trying to be exciting for the crowd. Public hangings are not a matter of spectacle, but there must be capital punishment when you have an individual who is willing to inflict mass casualty events, because until it's taken that level of seriousness, this society will crumble. And there's no other way around it. A federally funded timeout doesn't scare individuals away from doing it.
You can't end it on that. Hold on. There's another side to this and data that has shown about right-wing violence. I'm not trying to make this a left or right thing. I just started the segment by saying political violence. Take the word political out. Violence is violence.
Sure.
So we have to have leadership stem down from the top up. Stop using the words like radical and stuff like that to define other groups. I'm not disagreeing with you about how their words are interpreted to eventually lead to action.
What
I mean?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've got to call it out on both things. I've had this argument with Democrats and with Republicans as well. Like, let's tone it down. Let's do what Tony and I do every week. on this great show, and let's just talk to each other and have serious conversations about policy implementation, and let's tone it down, all right? Let's everyone take it down a notch, and let's call out each other's sides, by the way, when they're doing those type of things. I agree with Tony about the heightened rhetoric, especially on
That's why you have the podcast, Can We Please Talk?
Exactly.
Hey, we've come full
All right.
circle.
Full circle. All right. A great point to end on. I wish we had more time, but it's been so fun today. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very much,
Don.
It's a day of draws at the FIFA World Cup, co-hosted by the US, Canada, and Mexico. All 4 games yesterday ending in tied scores. Iran opening their World Cup campaign against New Zealand in Los Angeles amid protest against the Islamic regime. The game ultimately ending 2-2. Iranian fans cheered on their team, but booing the national anthem. After the game, a player was asked about the booing and the whistling.
Actually, we are here to answer football, a question about the football. So you have to know, my people in Iran, they are so great, they are so good into everything. Everyone in the world now knows about my people. If there is any problem between us, this is our business. This is none of your business. So I just respect you, but this is something between us, and we're gonna solve it. Don't worry.
Meanwhile, Iran's head coach criticized World Cup organizers, calling his team the most oppressed squad in the tournament. He said the team was instructed to fly back to its training base in Mexico just hours after the opening match. Earlier reports suggested Iran would have to enter and leave the U.S. on the same day as its matches. But the Department of Homeland Security denied the claim, saying the team would be allowed to arrive a day before games. Iran's coach said he doesn't know why his team was ultimately told to return to Mexico immediately after the game. 2 of soccer's biggest legends are beginning what could be their final World Cup campaigns. At age 38, Lionel Messi leads Argentina against Algeria today. Meanwhile, 41-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo leads Portugal against Congo tomorrow. Messi and Ronaldo dominated world soccer for more than a decade. They combined to win 13 Ballon d'Or awards between them, fueling one of the sport's greatest rivalries during their years at Barcelona and Real Madrid. Fans could get one final showdown between the 2 icons on soccer's biggest stage if Argentina and Portugal make deep runs in the tournament. New York City is the popular place to be during the FIFA World Cup, and Times Square is a popular place for fans to relax or have some fun. NTD's Sean Marshall went there to see how fans are experiencing the 2026 World Cup.
Let's go Mexico, even though we're not going to win it. It's cool, you know.
Are you from out of town?
No, I'm a Bronx kid, born and raised. This is my town.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about? Are you guys from out of town?
I'm from France. I travel only for the World Cup. I came only for the World Cup.
How are you guys liking New York City so far?
Oh, you know what? It's amazing. In summer, I think New York is the best city in the world so far. I mean, it's really diverse. It's so beautiful. I love it. Honestly, I love the vibe here. It's crazy, so I'm really happy to be here.
So what is this? The best World Cup memory? What do you guys have going on?
Basically, we want to try and gather fans telling us, sharing with us what's their best World Cup memory.
Nice, nice. And what's your best World Cup memory?
Oh, unfortunately, I'm Italian, so my best World Cup memory, of course.
You've got lots of memories.
Of course, my best World Cup memory is when we won the World Cup. Now, sadly, we couldn't make it for 3 editions in a row, but good memory.
I just arrived, that's the first place I just came in the Times Square, and I think I'm gonna see some stories here. And yeah, it's my third time here, so I kind of know the city a little bit, but I'm very excited to be here again, one more time.
So today we play against Senegal. It will be really hard, but hopefully we will win, and hopefully we will go get the third stars and get the World Cup and bring the World Cup to France.
So I'm going for Mexico. Even though we're not going to win the whole thing, I'm being honest. I'm going for Mexico. Who might win the whole thing? I think Netherlands might. Netherlands, maybe France or Argentina might do it again, one of them. I don't think Brazil will do it. Brazil's not the Brazil that it used to be. That's what I believe.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz presented President Trump with their German national football team jersey during the G7 summit in France today. The jersey bearing the number 47 was gifted while the FIFA World Cup continues across North America. Merz exchanged the gift with Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit. On the football front, Germany has made a strong start to its World Cup campaign. Germany will face Ivory Coast Saturday before concluding group play against Ecuador 5 days later. Now, France appears to be on its way to all 3 points in Group I. Les Bleus lead Senegal 2-0 in the closing minutes of play. And one of tennis's most iconic pairings is heading back to the All England club. Serena Williams is set to continue her comeback by reuniting with sister Venus in the women's doubles draw at the Wimbledon later this month. The 6-time Wimbledon doubles champions have been awarded a wildcard entry, marking their first appearance together at the tournament in a decade. Together, the Williams sisters have captured 14 Grand Slam double titles and remain one of the most decorated teams